So today we're going to look at a Volvo, 1998 Volvo C70 for the ABS light on and the Trac off light on. Customer reported that they'd had this diagnosed some time ago, and they were told they needed an ABS module quote. So we'll see what comes up when we scan it. So here's our first challenge. The snap-on Verus Edge does not support this Volvo. It goes back to 2000, so Snap-on didn't have the rights to scan a 98 Volvo. So we're going to have to fire up the Maxi-Sys. Here's another unique thing about this car. The OBD2 connector, according to the service literature, is supposed to be in front of the gear shift lever in that little compartment where the coin thing is, but it's not. It's actually in the console under the cover. Took me a while to find that. So we'll see if this Maxi-Sys Elite will read the VIN number out of this Volvo. May not support auto ID, but we'll find out shortly. So it was not able to auto ID it, so we're going to say manually ID it. Manual selection 98 to 99 to 98. North America. S70 98. All selection. Yes. Diagnosis. Auto scan. See if it'll do it. This is why you need to have more than one scan tool. And I'll pick up when this finishes scanning. So it's finished the network scan. It's showing one fault in the ECM and 3 faults in the ABS, and another one in the ECM again. So let's look at this first, see what we've got in the ECM. Actually, I could have went to the report, but we'll go here now. Code 422, barometric sensor signal. And we're going to go in here and have a look at the anti-lock brake system codes. Come on. So now we'll go into the ABS module directly. I could have went to the system report and seen a listing of all the codes in there as well. Wheel sensor circuit right rear circuit fault. Wheel sensor circuit right rear extrapolation counter. That's a big word. Pump motor electrical or mechanical fault. Well, these two are probably a wheel speed sensor problem, but this one here may be a problem with the pump motor. Now it's hard to say which one is. Of course, a faulty wheel speed sensor may cause it to run the pump more than it needs to. We're going to clear all these codes and see what comes back, if anything. Wonder if it clears them individually. No, these two keep coming back. Well, I'll do a little bit of investigating. So I'm going to try and graph the wheel speed sensor signals. Why does the front show 2 kilometers an hour and it's sitting still? Okay, both front wheels are turning now, so we got signals from those. Spinner rear. That's the right rear left. That one's working. And he's spinning the right rear and we got no signal. I'll definitely have a problem with the right rear speed sensor, so we'll have a look at the circuit. The front ones are both working, but no right rear. So here's the right rear speed sensor assembly. Nothing visually wrong with it. Cable runs up behind the fuel tank, and the other cable from the other side runs all the way across here. So we'll have to see what's common to fail, if it's common for the speed sensor reluctor to fail or speed sensor itself. I'm a little leery about trying to remove this because sometimes it won't come out of the housing. So here's the service literature I found for 314. It says failure of the ABS electronic control unit. Test the resistance of the speed sensor, compare it to the other side. Test the AC output frequency and voltage, compare it to the other side. So we're going to have to get to that connector, but before I'm going to do that, I want to see what the other fault code, the 443 code, relates to, because that sounds like it's more serious. So here's the diagnostic flow chart, or the conditions for that ABS pump motor electrical or mechanical fault, code 443. The control module determines whether the pump is working by checking to see if the pump is working without being activated. So it's monitoring the voltage on the system. Fuse 9, supply voltage to the control module, number 25 for the pump motor. So we're going to at least check some fuses. That code won't clear, so that is more serious than the wheel speed sensor code in my opinion. Well, fuse 9 is not the ABS fuse in this vehicle. It was actually fuse 3. I can't find any blown fuses, so we're going to have a look at the wheel speed sensor circuit. So both wheel speed sensors come up to that bright yellow connector, which would typically be an airbag connector, but it's not in this case. And we compared the left and right resistances, and 1.1 and 1.2 kilo ohms on each. Here's the speed signal from the right rear right now, and then we'll hook up and measure it on the left rear and compare. But that looks perfectly normal. Slow down. Maybe a little dirty. Well, we'll compare it to the other side. So this is the signal from the left side, which is not setting a code, and it looks the same. You can change the time base to 1 second. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll compare the other one again one more time. Go ahead, spin it. Okay, so there's the speed signal at 1 second coming from the right rear. So there's nothing wrong with the right rear signals and at the actual connector here in the trunk, but there could be an open between here and the ABS module. So the next thing to do would be check continuity of the wires between here and the ABS module to see if this signal is actually making it to the front. So after cycling that connector in the trunk, I'm going to clear the DTCs and see if it comes back. Some ABS systems require that the vehicle go through a self-test before it actually clears the codes. But regardless, we can look at live data again and graph the right rear and left rear speed signals. Got a signal from the left. And no signal from the right. So we're going to have to qualify the wiring from the trunk to the ABS module under the hood. So here's where the ABS pump motor assembly is located here, down underneath the master cylinder. Access is pretty good if you take the air induction system out. So basically we're going to repeat the same two tests that we did in the back now at the ABS motor pump module assembly. So we have to identify the two speed sensor signals and test it right at that connector in there. And my hydro went off, so I'm working with trouble lights. So basically just lift the cover on the connector and the connector unplugs. So while we're here we can actually test the power wires coming in here for the ABS pump motor and actually continuity through the pump motor. That's another connector, but we're going to check that, well, seeing as how we're here. So let's see which two circuits we're working with here. Right rear is pin 1 and pin 17. 1 and 17, so I'm going to have to figure out which one's which here. I don't see any numbering on here, but the wire colors are there. One is green and white, which is that one right there, and the other is green and red, but that's for the left. So the other one is green and black. So the two right across from each other. These two at the end here. These come from the right rear, and the next two in, green and yellow. Yep, the next two in, right there, come from the left rear. So we check these two and these two. We'll get set up. So that's the resistance of the right rear, 1.1 kilo ohms. I'll just move it to the next two pins, which is the left rear for comparison purposes. That one and that one. So both speed sensors measure the same resistance. Let's check for a short between them, just in case. It's over 4,000 ohms between that one. So I'm back on the right rear. I'm going to set this up to read AC voltage. Read DC voltage with the 0 line. I'm going to spin the wheel. So as you can see, there's a signal, which means that the ABS unit is failed. Well, we might check powers and grounds to this thing just to be on the safe side, but it's looking like it's going to need a ABS module assembly, but it may need a pump motor as well. So there are two heavy power wires coming in, these two red wires, and two heavy ground wires coming in, the two black wires. So I'm checking using a headlight to load the circuit. There's one, and there's the other. And this ground over here works fine too. So I'm sure the powers and grounds are good. I'm going to check continuity of that pump motor as well. So this is the pump motor down here, right here. And there's two wires coming off it that plug directly into another connector at the module. I've got it disconnected and I've got an ohm meter across it. And it reads 0.01 kilo ohms. Now I need to change the range to 40 ohms. And it reads 4.8 ohms. So the motor is not open and it's not shorted. Although that's not a perfect test. If it did test open or shorted, that would tell me that it's defective. But regardless, it needs the electronic portion of this ABS unit. Now whether you can service that separately from the hydraulic unit, I know you can on domestic vehicles, but I'm not sure about this. So we received a remanufactured ABS module from a place in Michigan, I think it was. I will put a link in the description to the supplier for this thing. Midwest ABS, I think it was called. Midwest ABS, Tecumseh, Michigan, yes. It's a remanufactured module, and the old one has to be returned for a core. They even supply a, I think it's an E5 or E6 socket, I'm not sure, I probably have one anyways, to remove the module. Now I've taken the air cleaner box out of this thing, and the module lives down here. It looks like it's fairly accessible as long as the fasteners come out. So the air box is out. The air induction is out of the way. Just going to disconnect the module and replace it. So it's actually an E5 bit that you need to take this off. Focus. I have it, so I didn't use their socket, but they supplied a socket, which is a nice touch. Make sure the module is the same part number. 9162675. 9162675. This one came out quite easily. The 4 screws from the bottom. There they are. Focus. And basically reverse procedure to install it. Just have a look, make sure that it looks the same, even though it's the same part number, it looks the same. Cool, so we'll put it in and see how it works. So we're going to start it and see what lights we have on. See, we still have a service light, and I don't know what that green triangle with the amber sign around it is, but no ABS light. That was above the service. So I'm going to see what codes it has now. We've got the scan tool hooked up to the DLC here, so we're going to scan it and see what codes it's got. But the ABS light is off. So I was looking up the history on this vehicle, and it just dawned on me that the snap-on scan tool did not support this car, and I didn't scan it with this car. So we're going to have to use the Autel MaxiSys. Okay, I remember now, this thing didn't auto ID, so I had to, and it wasn't supported by the Veris Edge, so I had to use the MaxiSys scan tool that you see here, manual ID it, and it's a 98, and I went with North American. Now, here's where I ran into a glitch. It's a C70, and that's not listed there, so I think I picked S70, and it's a 98, all selection, yes, and diagnosis, control unit, and ABS. I see the service warning indicator is off the dash, but that little green triangle is still there. I'm not sure what that means. Trouble codes. We had a code before for the right rear speed sensor, yet the circuit was working all the way up to the ABS module. So the codes are gone now. Let's do auto scan and see if there are any codes in any module. So I'll pick up when that gets through. So I see there are 2 faults reported in the ECM. That could be due to me unplugging the mass airflow sensor with the key on, and then turning the key on as I did before I put the air induction system back together. So we'll be sure to clear those codes, but we'll check to see what they are once this finishes the network scan. So I looked in the owner's manual. Turns out that that fancy green triangle with the amber outline is the check engine light, believe it or not. So that's probably on due to these ECM codes. So let's see what codes we have in the ECM. Hopefully they're related to the mass airflow sensor or intake air temp sensor, and we can just clear those. MAF sensor, TC control valve. Well, let's try clear it and see if the light will go off. Codes has been successfully erased. I'm just going to read them one more time. It says no faults detected. So let's go have a look at the car now. Well, that's good. All the warning lights are off. So it turns out that that light was the check engine light, believe it or not. Obviously they didn't have to follow that's that amber light with the green triangle in it. They didn't have to meet current North American OBD2 standards. And I don't know what the service light means, but it does go off after a few seconds. It could be oil change. I'll look it up in the owner's manual. But for now, the ABS code is cleared. I'm going to take it for a road test and see if any warning lights come back. We'll call this one a wrap. Thanks for watching. So there's the information on the service reminder light. Will stay on for 2 minutes to tell you that you've exceeded the 5,000 mile, 8,000 kilometer interval. It just went off just now. And the other indicator light, this one, item number 21, as you can see here, is the malfunction indicator light. See page 18 for more information. So there is a process to reset the service reminder, and that's done, I imagine, when an oil change is done. And they're probably not going to give us that information in the owner's manual, but I'll see if I can find it. So it turns out the MaxiSys scan tool will reset the service reminder in the instrument cluster options, and so now when we start the vehicle, it goes off immediately. If it needs to be reset or a service is required, it stays on for 2 minutes after starting the vehicle, just to nag you to tell you that it needs to be done. I'm going to check with the owner and find out when the last service was done, because this oil change sticker on the windshield is pretty old. But otherwise it should be good to go.